For the second part of today's lecture, let us talk about sample size calculation. In estimating the sample size, there are many formulas that can be used to compute for it. What to use or how large or how small a sample is expected or needed depends on many factors, and these are some of the most important ones. First, the study design. In general, cluster sampling designs will require larger samples than simple random sampling designs. Longitudinal studies also warrant larger samples than cross-sectional studies. The magnitude of the parameter being estimated also influences the sample size. The rarer the condition being investigated, the larger the necessary sample size. Third, the variability of the parameter being estimated. The more heterogeneous the parameter is in the population, the larger the sample size that is necessary. The level of confidence and degree of precision that is desired will also affect the sample size. Larger sample sizes obviously will be needed if you want a higher level of confidence and higher precision, meaning lower error. And then the data plan analysis. If you're going to do multivariate analysis, as for studying association, this would generally require a larger sample size than if you were just doing descriptive or univariate analysis. When you ask, how do you compute for the sample size? The first thing you look at is your objective. What are your objectives? And then look at your hypothesis, if any, no? Then you examine your outcomes of relevance. Are they dichotomous, meaning are you going to look at proportions, or are they continuous, meaning are you looking at means and the difference of means? From personal observation, I see that the most common objectives proposed in student research are the following: proportion, means, difference of means or the mean difference, association, and correlation. Before we go into the details of all the formulas for various objectives, this is my sample size advice to you in a nutshell. Compute your sample size based on your objectives, and then you input the values using the proper or correct formula. Input the values of a similar study from the literature, one that had the same objectives as yours. I entitled this slide Efficiency Check because I want to make the point that while we're going to teach you the formula for a specific sample size calculation with this objective, I'd like you to know that there are many apps or software or programs, websites that allow you to do sample size calculation, not manually, but by entering the values of concern. This is the reason why you must be very keen or you must understand deeply how to go about computing the sample size, because an understanding will allow you to input the correct values in places where you put them. Like you're just going to encounter blanks. All you need to know is what to write down in that blank, and then the calculation will be done for you by the app or the software. Let's proceed with the first example, estimating one population proportion. Let's say your objective reads like this: to determine the proportion of adult Filipinos with peripheral arterial disease. So you'd like to know, how do I get the sample size for this objective? So you go through the literature, which is what I did, and here I show you one particular article that I found. It's research by Urbano et al. On the prevalence and risk factors associated with peripheral arterial disease in an adult population from Colombia. So while I'm not looking at association, the article did give me this Result: overall PAD, or peripheral arterial disease, was 4.4, and then it gave the proportions for males and females. But this is all I need to put in my calculation or my derivation of the sample size. Efficiency check, I can go to openepi.com. Efficiency means being able to do a task in an easier, faster manner using less resources like time and effort. So openepi.com is a free website that allows you to use or to do simple sample size calculations. If you look at the left column, you see their sample size, and if you expand that, you'll be able to derive sample size for proportion, for RCT, cross-sectional cohort studies. So this is how it appears to you, and you see these tables. On the right side, you see sample size for a proportion or descriptive study, and then you see this table with the blue fill in that tells you enter new data. So here I will input the value 4.4 in this blank called anticipated percent or frequency. This is because 4.4 is the value that I got from the existing medical literature. So after putting it there, I click calculate, and the output will come out as this figure on the right. Sample size for frequency in a population, and that it gives me different confidence levels and the desired sample size for each level. So at 95% confidence level, I need 65 participants in order to make that estimate, and within a precision margin of 5%. Here you see the formula for the estimation of single population proportion when you try to do it manually. So the formula shows n, where n is the required sample size. N equals z squared times pq over d squared, where z is the reliability of the estimate or the standard normal deviate corresponding to the set level of significance. And here in the green box, you see pre-computed for 90% confidence level, for 95% confidence level, and 99% confidence level. You see the respective values of the computed z squared, so you don't have to do it again and again. And then P is the estimate of the true proportion obtained from previous studies, like I said earlier. And then Q is the value 1 minus P, or 100 minus P. Remember that if you're using the whole numbers, you convert this to 100, no? But if you're using decimals, be reminded that the value of D should also be inputted as a decimal, so that it doesn't, mess up your calculations. And then D is the precision, or the maximum tolerable error that is deemed acceptable by you as the researcher. So on the right, this is my actual manual computation, and you see in the part where you get P and Q, I use the whole numbers. So 4.4%, and then 100 minus 4.4 over 5 squared, which is 5% margin of precision. Had I chosen to use 1, I would have entered like 0.044, and then 1 minus 0.044 over, instead of using 5, you use 0.05. Okay, and then the answer comes out as 65, which is the same answer that we got from OpenEpi. So you'll be able to compute easily using derive easily using softwares and apps. But it's always good to know how the formula looks like, what it contains or what it asks for, and then you can always do a check, recheck, just to be sure that you understand how it's done. Backtracking a bit into the openepi.com website, you see that the population size, the first entry there, is set at 1 million. So these are the settings when the assumption is that you're doing it on a big population. But what if the group or the population from which you're taking is less than 1 million? Let's say you just want to study the responses of a group of medical students from first to fourth year. Definitely, that's not 1 million. So you have to input or to acknowledge the finite limits of that population. And there you employ the formula for finite correction or the finite correction factor. So from the previous example, we got a sample size of 65. That was on the premise of a large population of 1 million. But let's say our population is finite and you know how many people there are exactly in the group that you want to study. So let's say there's just 450 of them. So when you input your values, you put your population size 450, the anticipated frequency is still the 4.4 from the study found in the literature, and then calculate, and you find here that the sample size, it changes. So it's now 57 at a confidence level of 95%. And the software or the program labeled it as population size for finite population correction factor, or FPC. So you see the change or the difference in the computed sample size when you specify a finite population. And doing this manually, this is the formula that you use if you want to practice. So let's try this one. For finite sample size, we use the formula sample size all over 1 plus sample size minus 1 over population. And using the one that we got for the default 1 million, the sample size was 65. So that was 65 over 1 plus the fraction 65 minus 1 over 450. 65 over 1.14 boils down to 57. And this is the figure that we got when we inputted the 450 as a finite population. So that's how you do it. Let's go now to our second example. Let's say we want to compare two population proportions. For example, your objective is to compare the proportion of smokers and non-smokers among patients with severe COVID-19 infection. So again, you hit the literature. Our usual go-to when we want to look for articles is PubMed. And I found this article by Hobala El Haidari et al. It's entitled Infection Severity Among Lebanese Adults, a Cross-Sectional Study. And from table 2, I was able to construct this sentence from the data shown in table 2. Among 138 patients with severe COVID-19, 61 or 44.2% were non-smokers and 77 or 55.8% were smokers. To derive the desired sample size, I'm using now a different website. This is statulator.net. And one of the things that it allows me to do is to calculate for comparing two independent proportions. So you input the values here. So there are two places. One is referred to as the reference group and the other is the test group. But basically, it could be interchangeable. And then you put in the values of each of those two groups that we just mentioned. And here you see what I wrote down, and then on the right, it gives you the desired sample size. But please note that the number it gives you is not the total sample size. It is the sample size per group. So the total would be 572. You do not get 286 and divide it by 2. You get 286 as a point of reference for one group, and then 286 again for the other group. Going further, I tried to look for other websites or other resources to be able to compute the sample size, and I found this select-statistics.co.uk, and it allows me to compute again, but this time the values can be inputted with the decimal point. The previous slide only showed bars that you can move, so it was like 44 and 55. But here, in answer to the question, what do you believe the likely sample proportion in group 1 to be, you can input 44.2, and in the second question, 55.8. So your recommended sample size is slightly different. It's 288 now, but still within reasonable approximation, no? So 288. And then furthermore, this site says what formula was used for the sample size and from what study it came. So this calculator uses the following formula as highlighted, and again we are given what the letters actually require or ask for, the values that you input. So you can do a rechecking on your own. Because we talked of comparing proportions, it's just logical that we proceed now to association, which basically compares proportions of those with and without an outcome among those with and without an exposure. So for example, your objective is to determine the association of peripheral arterial disease or PAD and myocardial infarction MI. Again, searching through the literature uh, to find the basis of a sample size calculation, I came across this article by Perez, Faxas et al. That said this: participants with PAD had a significant increased risk of total MI events with a relative risk of 1.67 and the confidence interval given here. So I highlighted the value that I need to compute the sample size. For this one, I'm back to openepi.com using the choice of sample size for cross-sectional, cohort, and randomized controlled or randomized clinical trials. Because these studies are analytical, they compare groups or they compare the relationship. They look at the relationship of variables. This application or this selection asks of you to put in the percent of unexposed with outcome. This one you get from literature as well. And then you put in any of the following values below the yellow bar. You can either put the odds ratio, you can put the percent of exposed with outcome, and the other choices. For this one, I already know that the risk ratio or the relative risk is 1.67 from the study that I found. But I have yet to know what is the percent of unexposed with outcome. And basically, that is just the general prevalence of the thing that you're looking for. So I found this study, Salari et al., which stated that the global prevalence of MI in individuals less than 60 years old, which is usually a good proxy for the general population, was found to be 3.8%. And I used that to input the percent of unexposed with outcome. And then now I'm ready to calculate. I click calculate and openepi.com gives me the sample size. So it distinguishes and shows clearly the sample size of exposed, the sample size of non-exposed with 1230 each for a total sample size of 2460 if you get the one with the highest sample size that flies with the continuity correction. And above that, you see the premises made for the sample size calculation, that there's 1:1 ratio of the unexposed and exposed. You're running it at 95% significance level with a power of 80%, and then you have a risk or prevalence ratio of 1.7. It rounded off the 1.67 to 1.7. So you see how it was done, at what values and at what premises and assumptions. Let's look now at the sample size derivation or calculation of an objective on correlation. I'm putting this close to the association because association and correlation analysis are done when you want to see the relationship between variables. So correlation requires that the variables be reported as continuous variables, meaning a number. So, for example, your objective is to correlate or to determine the correlation of particulate matter PM2.5 concentration and autism in children. I was surprised to easily find this study by Ruiyua et al. That looked at the association between particulate matter 2.5 exposure and children with autism spectrum disorder. And this is what they wrote on the results. A statistically significant positive correlation was found between the serum levels of PM2.5 and the Childhood Autism Rating Scale, or CARS score, indicating severity of autism. So you see that you're comparing number to number. You cannot compare, let's say, you cannot do correlation, let's say, if the PM level was reported as a number and the childhood autism was reported as present or not present. That's more for an association objective. But this one is number versus number, so it's correlation. So how is it done? The sample size calculation. For this one, I used samplesize.net. And this is one of my favorites because it allows you to compute across a wide range of possible sample sizes depending on objective. For the correlation sample size, these are the things that it requires, the usual. So the power, uh, the level of significance, and then you put in the R, which is the reported correlation coefficient. And here I inputted the 0.259, and then you hit calculate, and then it gives you the sample size. It not only shows you the sample size of 115, it also shows the formula for the sample size. So if you want to manually check, then go right ahead and practice. What if you want to do estimation of a single population mean? Let's say your objective goes like to determine the mean scores on the Child and Youth Resilience Measure CYRM28 of children of farmers living in northern Luzon in 2023. This could be inspired by the news that you hear of frequent flooding and destruction of agriculture in the northern areas after several storms that came in, rapid sequence, one after the other. So it's possible that I may not find a study done in the Philippines a few years ago. It's possible that this is the first time someone's looking at it. So I could try to look for studies, let's say, in Asia, where the weather or the climate is similar. I could also look for other studies with slightly different contexts, but using the same measure, for example, the CYRM. So I found a study by McDonald, Harker et al. That's entitled Social Ecological Factors Associated with Higher Levels of Resilience in Children and Youth After Disaster, the Importance of Caregiver and Peer Support. In here, they reported that the total mean CYRM28 score was 118.65 with a standard deviation of 10.23. And this gives me what I need to compute for the sample size or derive it from an app or software. So I'm back to statulator.com, and you see here that it asks for the level of confidence that you want, so that's 95%. The expected standard deviation, that's from the article, 10.23. And this one, the precision or margin of error, you as the researcher will decide that. What is the precision that you want? You would know that as you make that number smaller, the sample size will increase. So what this sample size of 104 shows us is that if you select a random sample of 104 from a population, from this population, and determine the mean to be like the value y, you would be 95% confidence that the mean in the population lies somewhere between y minus 2 and y plus 2. And you need 104 to be able to do that. If you increase this margin of error, let's say you made it 3 or 4, then your required sample size will be lower. If you want to try out the formula for manual computation, here it is, where S is the standard deviation obtained from the previous study or pilot study, and D is the accuracy of estimate or how close to the true mean. Basically, what the screenshot from the previous slide showed us. And you see that in the sample size calculation, it does not even ask for the mean. It just asks for the standard deviation. So my last example is for comparing two independent means. Before I end, I'd like to drive out the point that these are not all the scenarios in sample size calculation. There are many scenarios that could be, as you roll your project along, you will discover, iba pala to dun sa diniscuss in class. But by far, these are probably the most common scenarios or settings of sample size calculation. No? So for the last one, we're trying to compare two independent means, meaning they're not related, they come from different groups. So let's say the objective is to compare the mean happiness scores of men and women prior to the COVID-19 pandemic. How were people before the pandemic struck? So this study by Sung Kuhn et al. Showed me this table too, where mean happiness score was tabulated according to social demographic characteristics, subjective health, and other variables. So I got the one for sex. And the mean score for males is 7.04 with a standard error of 0.01, and females had a mean score of 6.97 with a standard error of 0.01. In the previous formula, we saw that we need the standard deviation. The standard error is not the standard deviation, but there's a formula that allows you to convert standard error to standard deviation. You just need to multiply the SE by the square root of the sample size. Because this study gave its sample size both for the male and the female, I was able to derive the standard deviation. Going back to OpenEpi, I now choose the sample size for mean difference. So the tabulation asks for the mean of group 1 and its standard deviation, and the mean for group 2 and its standard deviation. So the standard deviation I derived are shown here, both for the males and the females. I inputted the means as well, and this is how it comes out as the sample size for comparing two means. I need a sample size of 36,700 for group 1 and the same number for group 2. Now, this looks like a lot, but if you look at the study from which I patterned it, their population size was more than 100,000 for each group. Sample size was more than 100,000 for each group. But because you don't have to do this study, no worries. You just needed to see how we derive the sample size when there are two groups whose means you want to compare. I will not dwell on the sample size for interventional studies because as students and for this semester, we're not allowed to do interventional studies. We're only doing observational. But for those of you who might be interested to learn more, you can visit this website, www.sealedenvelope.com. So it tells you a lot about interventional experimental studies, no? And one of the functions that it has is a power calculator that allows you to compute for the sample size when you have a binary outcome or a continuous outcome for superiority or equivalence or non-inferiority trials. So if you have time, go take a look and learn some more. I'll end with these common values that are used in sample size manual computation, so you don't have to square everything again and again. So these are the usual values of alpha and beta. Alpha for one-sided and two-sided, and then for the coefficients, they're shown here. So you can use these values when you want to practice doing manual computations. So in summary, well-formulated objectives serve as a guide toward correct sample size calculation. A good review of the literature provides the basis for the values used in sample size calculation. Knowledge of the target and accessible populations, as well as eligibility criteria, set the stage for proper sampling. And understanding the factors that demand a larger or smaller sample size allows adjustment as necessary for improved feasibility. So with that, I'd like to end and thank you all for listening.